what's anime? Uh, I guess I'm gonna call that last one like one of those note to self and to you type things. Cause all that stuff is just swimming around in my head, and it made me forget other stuff that I actually put notes up on YouTube to try to remember. And they're connected in a way, so that's cool. I don't know how much time I have because they're at the dentist, and he'll be sleeping when they get back, and I always nap with him. So I was listening to Formscapes, which I just subbed on YouTube. Very, very cool channel. That dude, I don't know his background. I haven't listened to too many of his videos, but he's very, very analytical, very heavy with vocabulary and research and so on and so on. But depending on what you're into and what you've studied and researched, you can follow. Even if he goes into things that you haven't studied, you can get, you can follow by the context clues. So he started off talking about Watts. And I guess Watts has this theory or paper or, lecture, presentation, whatever, where he is talking about a thought experiment, which turns out to be more than a thought experiment, where essentially it's talking about simulation theory in the guise of, what many of us have theorized. Because I think any of us that really are at a I don't want it to sound like a hierarchy, but seriously, any of us that are at a specific level realize that any of the theories that we come up with, it's going to come down to essentially discernment, but really it comes down to you're not going to know until you know. And I am very suspicious of beings that say that they know before they're dead, or before they're transcended is a better term for it. I will say I don't believe in death in that sense. You may see the death of your avatar here, but I don't think that that's what we've all been led to believe it is. I think that's a way to make some other things happen after said transcendence, to maybe get you to recycle yourself, essentially. Anyway, Alan Watts is proposing, this scenario where you are this very powerful being, let's say that, and you have the capability to create this game for yourself. And it's this, and you're essentially going through experiences, because in the other form of yourself, you don't experience things, or you don't experience things in the same way. Let's say it like that. And you go through iterations, and each time you go through iterations of this game, you add more stipulations, you add more data sets that affect how your experience in the game works, what you're capable of doing, what the game is capable of doing, if you're alone, if there are others, and so on and so forth. And so he proposes that you keep restarting the game and adding these new matrices to said game, and then it takes a turn. He says, almost my interpretation was you almost become like a junkie. You almost become like a adrenaline junkie, I would say, where you get bored, or however you would want to say that, with the game, and so you give more creative capability to the game itself, rather than you having control over all of the aspects of the game. You start to let it do things on its own, and then you get bored with that, and you start to relinquish some of your powers, some of the things that you're actually capable of doing within the 21 gram version of you. Some call that the higher self. Some call that the deified version of yourself. The light body. There's many different names for it, but pick whichever one you want. And so you start to relinquish, powers that you have to make the game more adventurous, to make it more exciting for this, iteration of you. And you keep going doing that until essentially you decide, okay, well, I want to try it with no powers, or to add some myself, puzzles that I can unlock the powers with, but they're very, very difficult puzzles, and they're hard to achieve. The game is working against you when you try to solve these puzzles. And there are other iterations that walk around and do stuff that look like you, that also make it difficult. And then he moves on to say, okay, and then you get used to that. And then you say, you know what? I'm going to take away my own memory of choosing to be in this game, of creating this game myself. Essentially saying, like, I'm going to think that I am a part of this game now. And it's not to say that that's the only time I've heard that. Alan Watts, has been talking for a long time, so I'm sure the others that I've heard say versions of that are maybe even referencing Alan Watts. But to be fair, one of the things that I'm starting to notice is those of us that do think in these paths, and I call it weigh 21 grams, that are aware. Some of you call it awake. We start to think the same things, and I think that that's natural. I think that there are probably some out there that are going to start like, oh, well, you're copying me, or you're copying me, which that in itself, once you start doing that, you're displaying that you're still caught in the game, because those things don't matter. What matters is that you now you're starting to remember that, you're in a game. And this, I'm not saying this is what I believe, but I'm just using some of the aspects of it, because I'm trying to explain these notions that I have, these feelings that I have, intuitions that I have, experiences that I have, in as many ways as possible, for multiple reasons, so that others that feel this but don't understand it can start to see other people working their way through it, and begin to do that for themselves, so that others who are, beating up on themselves for this experience, but still like kind of have a feeling that something's wrong with it, can, hear a different interpretation or explanation of what this is, and start to heal, because trauma is a very big part of this experience. It plays a huge part. It's almost like what the game is fighting against that, for lack of a better way to convey that. But yeah, that's not the only ones. There are a lot of reasons why I feel drawn to doing this. And some of them are even for a sense of, to find, I've said this before, to find the others. I have a sense, a feeling that there are others, and that, I have this need to find them. I can't really explain it any better than that. It's like, I feel you out there. You feel like what family feels like. But I'm very weary of the English language. Is shit. The English language is wrought with bullshit, and it's by design meant to, it's not on your side. The English language is not on your side. It's on whatever that is that's inflicting things and whatnot, that side. What I will say also, though, is that I don't know that I don't think I've ever heard another interpretation that I fully agree with. I just started listening to to Howdy. Man, it's been like 15 minutes. I have too much stuff in my brain. I can't remember the last name, but it's a channel, and I said it in the last video. I would promise that I'll put it in the notes. I'll find it and put it somewhere. You know, you'll you'll see it. I think I posted. I did. I posted it. I made a post, so it's in my posts. That channel. If you're into what I'm talking about, that dude also doing very good and beneficial work. I don't agree with everything that I've heard from other beings, but I haven't heard anything I don't agree with from Howdy yet. I haven't gone into too much. I think I've listened to a video and a half so far. So far, we're very close to what we're saying. I'm in agreement with much, if not all, of what he's saying. And then also Jay Dreamers. Like, I don't think I've heard anything I disagree with, because the things that he says that I maybe don't agree with, he never says that he believes them. He's just documenting his studies and his research. So I guess that's 2 so far. That's really encouraging, coming from a couple of days ago where, you know, my mind's telling me, you're the only person that's doing this work. You're the only person that's thinking like this or researching or trying to come up with this. You know, the only word I have is theory, but it's not a theory. I'm trying to figure it out, essentially. It's not coming up with a theory. It's trying to come up with as much as possible so that maybe, even though it feels daunting and whelming, maybe we do find it. Maybe we do figure it out through sharing with each other, you know, experiences and research. But going back to Alan Watts, what I will say is I don't agree with the idea of specifically just becoming a junkie, you know, for lack of better terminology, but that makes sense for what that describes, and then getting lost in it like this. Not saying that that's not possible. It just doesn't resonate with me all the way. I do believe it is possible, but it doesn't resonate with me all the way. And I say that because the experiences that I'm having are so they're so negative sometimes, and overall the experience is negative if I have to look at the entirety of it. Not saying that there aren't good parts of it, or there haven't been beautiful things that I've seen or done or, you know, smelled, taste, all that stuff. But in totality, it does still feel like something is inflicted. Something's being inflicted or done to me maliciously. So what I would say, to kind of give my own interpretation of that thought experiment, is that it more so feels like, you know, the build up to that, meaning Alan Watts saying, you know, you're essentially this deity-like figure, and you continuously reshape this game that you've created for yourself to experience. It resonates with me up until the point where you kind of lose control and say to yourself, you know what, I'm just going to let the game do whatever it wants to me. I like Alan Watts, and this isn't it's not a indictment of his overall thought process. What I am saying, though, is what resonates more with me, and seemingly what resonates more with what I've heard from other beings like me, Howdy Mikowski and, Jay Dreamers and some other people as well, is that maybe the first part is possibly true, and we are playing said game. But what resonates more, because of the experiences within the game, they feel so malicious sometimes that what if, you know, you are not the only... I don't even think it makes sense to assume that you are the only being and no other beings exist. So going along that line, my brain went more in the direction of some other entity, some other being. You know, maybe you know this being, maybe you don't, maybe you have some kind of pre-existing thing with this being, somehow infiltrates the game that you created and sort of takes it over and starts to do things to you. sort of like if you were playing a video game like Grand Theft Auto, or I forgot that other one, open world games, any open world game. If someone else was to, when you weren't playing or when you weren't paying attention, reprogram the game that you have created to be very, very dark and malicious, and to have all of these things that don't feel good or natural to you, and you started playing the game, and maybe they put parameters on it to where it's very difficult to remember that you're in the game, or to get out of said game. That resonates more based on experience, and based on what experiences I've heard others give and how they view it. Both are possible. I'm not saying that Alan Watts's thought experiment is not possibly the case, or possibly a good summation. Just applying more of the experience itself, rather than just trying to describe the game itself. So going off of the stimulus or stimuli and the game, versus just going off of the game. Because I don't think that anything can be discounted when trying to like understand it. I think that it's very important for those of us that are kind of doing work that's kind of dancing around the same topic, even if it doesn't seem like it. I've mentioned before, like Jay Dreamers is doing a different type of work, but then again, he's not. I think in some form or fashion, it's important for those of us that are doing research and experiments, and coming up with essays and talks, thought experiments, anything that could be considered steps past consuming. And it's not to say that consuming the work is bad. That's why we're doing it. We're not just, if we didn't want it to be consumed and considered, then we wouldn't be making it public. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying those of us that are doing this, though, because there are beings that have expressed to me, even like, I'm trying to be private, and I respect that. I know that, depending on where you're at in this very, very oppressive thing, you may want to be kind of left alone and reserve your sovereignty to like choose who you speak with, who finds you, who speaks with you, knows what you look like, and all of that stuff. Because very, recently I was the same. I was like that too. But I do think that those of us that are doing these types of work, that are either loosely tied or directly like correlate with each other, the more that we connect in some kind of way, the more beneficial I think it is, both for our own work and for the work in totality. And I don't know a way to convey that to the others, without them kind of disassociating with these constructs. Like, I'm more successful than this person. Like, more people are aware of me than this person. So why should I spend my time talking to, like, these are things that we have to try to get past so that like we can further it. Because, the saying that, two heads are better than one, or more heads are better than one, or whatever you want to call it, that's true in this sense. Because, earlier I recorded a video, that I would say is up. It is up. I put it up. That was me very, not overwhelmed, but just in overdrive. Like, very difficult to wrangle all of the ideas and thoughts that were being produced from the stimuli that I've had today, like conversations, research, that I've done today, stuff from last night, like all of it's kind of swimming around in my head. And you know, one could say slow down, but that's not how it works. If you've been diagnosed with ADHD, which I don't believe in, then you at least are familiar with the concept of having like this much, thought being produced in your mind and not necessarily being able to turn it off. So I've got all of this stuff that is contributing to the research itself and to the theory that I'm trying to build. And so my brain is like, you can't throw any of this away. You can't discard any of this or file it away even for the moment. It's all like, pick me right now. You know what I'm saying? So very difficult. And if the more beings that are working on this type of work specifically, the easier that is. Because as long as you can get those thoughts out and, documented somewhere in enough length to make sense, then you don't necessarily have to just rely on you to look into it further. Because the Alan Watts thing, that seems very, very like worthy of discussion at the very least. The fact that Formscapes and a couple others that seem like they're doing similar work, there's like a feeling of needing to not touch base with them, but like I think it would be beneficial if something was created to where, at the very least, even if you don't interact with the other researchers, we're compiling our work and putting it in a place that both protects, just for the sake of construct, protects your having found these, thought experiments, or, if you do a video essay on a specific concept, or, whatever it is, it still protects that you did that. It shows that you did that, but it's contributing to a larger, like, consortium of all of this information, so that maybe, we're all working on it, but maybe it's going to end up taking someone that just consumes and thinks about it, and they come in and put the pieces together in a way that shows the picture, I guess basically I'm starting to come to the concept of like, some of us, and you know what, I spoke to someone earlier that was like, hey, you need to edit your stuff down, or get a PR person, or whatever, your channel's growing very fast, but this and this. And I'm like, that's not the point of what I'm doing. I know that for all intents and purposes right now, we haven't lost the concept of money. We're not on a barter system, which I think we're going to end up on. We're not going to have a choice when things keep progressing as they are right now. So for all intents and purposes, I need money, you know what I mean? And there's not even quotes. I need money, but I don't like money. I don't like the concept of it. I don't like the framework of it. I don't like what it does to beings. I think it's bad for society. I'm not trying to sound like a hippie or whatever, but like, that's just true. Like in the truest sense, that system, not only to me is degradation, but I think it's intentionally degradation. And so I'm trying to find the balance of, okay, you still need to maintain yourself, but I don't like participating. And that's why a lot of the time, it's not just for the sense of all of us that I say we should stop participating, but I think it would help all of us mentally and functionally. There's so much unhealthy shit that I see people chasing after, or telling each other they should do, or obsessing over. Their entire life is like, wake up and grind and all this shit. And it's unhealthy. I don't think that that's our natural inclinations. I think that we're just imprinted with that shit. And the more that we can maybe find ways to shed that, I think the more we'll be able to figure out about what this is. Because there are beings that feel like they know what this is, but then, the things that they're doing don't match. they seek out people to argue with, to like uh, kind of re reinforce it for themselves. Uh, there's an occultist that I follow. He's like a black magic user. I don't do black magic. I just like perspectives. But he was talking about how like religious beings, like Abrahamic more so than not, beings like to go into people's comment. And I've said this too, so I'm not trying to put it on just him. They like to go into people's comments and like start arguments with them because they don't have the same beliefs as them. And, you know, many times the explanation is, oh, well, I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to save you. But if you go by your Savior's teachings, Jesus's teachings, who it's not to say that I don't believe Jesus existed or anything like that. Just we have differences in what we think, in what you believe and what I think. But you're not following Jesus's teachings by trying to force people into that belief system or faith system. That's not what Jesus asked or instructed. And then it goes further than that. There's other things also that I believe that I've talked about before, or I theorize. I don't necessarily know that I believe anything other than experience. But he was basically saying that, like, you know, occultists and you know, in any form of the sense, black magic users, just occult researchers, don't tend to do that. They don't jump in people's comments like, "Oh, you're dumb because you believe in this," or because they don't care. I knew that, but when I heard him say that, I was like, "Yeah, oh shit, that is, you know, just never thought about it actively before." Where it's like, and I've even said it. That's what's kind of funny about it is like I've said that recently, that they keep coming into comments and like starting shit with me, but I just chalked it up because it's not new. That's not a new thing to me. But to hear him say that outright, I was like, oh shit, yeah, that is true. You know, you don't really see others doing that. I guess that's the part I didn't think of actively, is that it seems to just be the Abrahamic leaning beings that do that. And the notion that it's because the others don't care. Like, you can do what you want to do, I'm doing what I'm doing. And the interesting, you know, kind of contrast of how the ones that you think wouldn't care because they believe that they're going to the best possible outcome, you would think that they would not care about the others that they think are going to damnation and hellfire. But it's the other way around. And that is very fucking interesting to me. Like I said, my theory is that it's to like reinforce it that they're not making a mistake, that they're not wrong with what they have put everything into, all the eggs in that basket. And that's not an, you know, it's not an indemnification or an indictment or anything, just what it seems like to me. But yeah, I am going to try to figure out how I can maybe try to get in touch. And if it doesn't work out at first, like, I think I'll just keep trying, because it really does seem necessary to try to form some kind of like place, at least a place to put all of this work very specific to this. Donald Hoffman, a physicist, that's his thing right now. I've spoken about him before. Like, there are people all over the spectrum. You know, Donald Hoffman is very involved in academia. You know, from what I understand, he's the type that does official studies, submits, you know, studies and papers and things in an official academic capacity. I don't have any interest in that, but I do have an interest in Donald Hoffman and, you know, Howdy Mikowski and Jay Drake. Like, these beings that are thinking in the same direction, whether they see the significance in that very like niche direction to think in or not. I see it, and I would like to like make more of that. I would like to consolidate that so that we can compare notes, add notes, all of the things. Um, and the cool thing about it to me is that I believe that those other beings would know we're not. It wouldn't be building some kind of religion or church or any of that stuff. And it's not to say that you can't have religion or any of those things if you need those things to continue the experience, but that wouldn't be the point of this. The point of this would be continuing the research, like continuing the work to, the hope would be to find an answer or some answers, but if you have really put some thought into it, the probability of that is not very likely. The probability of that is not very high. Um, but yet and still, it would be good to put those things in one place, accessible to us all and potentially, everyone. I don't see why everyone shouldn't have access to at least finished works. Maybe you could put your stuff there, and if it's not a done project or study, um, then, only participants can view it. I don't know. I think I'm building something on on a video. I'm just trying to get it all out while it's flowing out of me so I can, uh, not forget it because my brain is. I'm trying to catch up, but my brain is doing a lot, and it's hard to catch up. I am catching up, but it takes a minute, and while I'm catching up, it's still going. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. I haven't seen anybody else be like, yeah, man, my brain's doing the same thing. It feels like it's changing, rewiring, and so no one's saying that to me. So I'm wondering if it comes off as nuts. But he's back, and I'm glad I documented. Peace, though.